Okay, it's 6:02. Let's go ahead and kick things off. We have 23 participants. People will definitely be joining within the first few minutes of the event, 24. So we're definitely climbing, really excited for everyone to be here tonight. So welcome everybody, happy Earth Week. Welcome to the New York Sunworks and New York Power Authority's virtual Earth Day workshop. So tonight's event is about sustainability, science, and climate education in the 21st century. My name is Nicole Grossberg. I'll be moderating tonight's panel. And I've been with New York Sunworks for almost 2 years now. I manage their social media and community events. And just a little bit of background about us. We're a nonprofit that builds innovative hydroponic science labs in public schools. So through our greenhouse project initiative, now in 170 New York City public schools, so that's a little more than 10% of the New York City public schools. K through 12th grade students participate in every step of hydroponic farming, from seed to harvest to eating what they grow, while also learning STEM and environmental science through a standards-based Discovering Sustainability science curriculum. So really amazing work, and I absolutely loved working for New York Sunworks and really excited and honored to be here tonight to moderate this panel. Definitely give New York Sunworks a follow on social media. So we're at NY Sunworks, and then sign up for our newsletter to learn more. And I will drop those links in the chat as the event goes on. So once again, on behalf of Sunworks and everyone here, we're super excited to be here tonight in partnership with New York Power Authority, or NIPA, our amazing panelists, and of course, all of you, our audience. So I know there are a lot of events going on this week because of Earth Day, Earth Week. So we really appreciate everybody who's here taking an hour out of their week to just spend it with us tonight and to learn a little bit more about science and sustainability and climate change. So now I'm going to pass it over to Matt from NIPA, and he'll tell you a little bit more about their environmental justice program.
Thank you, Nicole. And it's so amazing to see everybody on the webinar today. Definitely excited to be here. Very interested in the conversation we're going to have going forward. So thank you everyone for joining and taking the time out of your day to spend with us. My name is Matt Caruso. I work within NIPA's Environmental Justice Department. So just a little bit about the New York Power Authority. We're actually the state's largest public utility. And when I say public utility, our main gig is that we make electricity. Hopefully you could see my virtual background behind me. I tried to get a little creative today. This is actually our power dam out in Niagara Falls. We have 2 power dams. We have the one out in Niagara Falls, and we have another one out up in Messina, where if you pretty much take 5 steps forward, you're practically in Canada. And through those 2 facilities, along with some of the smaller hydro we have in the central part of the state, we generate roughly between 70 to 80% of our electricity strictly through hydro. So that's clean energy by using water. And then we have some smaller power plants in New York City as well. So our Environmental Justice Department goes all throughout New York State, working closely with those neighborhoods that host our facilities. And we work specifically with the youth and with the adults in those neighborhoods. We do a lot of STEM programming. We worked hand in hand with Sunworks, delivering programming through our Green Classroom initiative, as well as different programming revolving around renewables and the utility industry, and just trying to spark an interest in STEM, hopefully having some kids dreaming of being an engineer and a scientist and a mathematics or what have you, helping them realize that it's possible and they could do whatever they set their eyes to and their dreams to. We work with adults in the neighborhood to try and just inform them on different things as far as energy literacy goes. I'm helping them kind of informing them with knowledge to lower their utility bills, save on some money, as well as save energy at the same time. So that's kind of our EJ department in a nutshell. I don't want to take too much time because we really got a great conversation ahead of us. And thank you, Nicole, for organizing this.
Yeah, of course. We've had a great partnership with NIPA for several years now, and we're really excited to be doing this event with you. And hopefully we can make it an annual thing.
Absolutely, I agree.
So yeah, so thank you for that. And as we've been saying, we have an amazing panel tonight. So we have Hannah Jarris, who's actually our Director of Education at Sunworks. So you'll hear more about what New York Sunworks does and what she does with our curriculum. We have Liel Berman, who's the Sustainability Senior Project Coordinator at NIPA. And then we have Debbie Lee Cohen, who's the Executive Director and founder of Cafeteria Culture. So before we kick off the panel, just a couple of housekeeping items. We will have a formal question and answer Q&A at the end of the workshop tonight, the last 10 minutes or so. We might go a few minutes over, but everyone who's attending, feel free to use the raise your hand function if you want to talk or make a comment or ask a question throughout the event. If something sparks your interest, we definitely want this to be as engaging and conversational as possible, and not us just talking at you the whole time, which is why we have it as the meeting function. So all of you can we can see each other's faces. So feel free to put your cameras on, take your microphones off, as long as we're just being, respectful of each other's time and not interrupting. But definitely feel free to do that. Feel free to drop your introduction in the chat, talk to each other, exchange information and resources, and make a comment, anything that you'd like. And yeah, so we'll be doing that all throughout the workshop. And I would just absolutely love to kick it off. And Hannah, would you like to start? I'd just love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and what you do at Sunworks.
Absolutely. So it's so wonderful to have everybody here today. As Nicole already said, I'm the Director of Education Programs at New York Sunworks. I've been with New York Sunworks for about a little under almost 2 years now. Nicole and I actually started on the same day. But I'm going to let some pictures do a little bit of talking for us. You can see behind me a picture of one of our labs. I'm not actually in one of our labs today, but I just wanted to, so let me show you a little bit about where our learning, our discovering sustainability science really takes place. So the mission of our education program, we build innovative science labs in urban schools, and we use hydroponic farming technology to educate students and teachers about sustainability science. And before I go on, we build hydroponic labs. So that means that we're growing plants without any soil. And this is an example of what one of our labs looks like. We have vine crop systems. So this is where students and teachers are going to grow their fruiting vegetables, their eggplants, tomatoes, cucumbers. We have the NFT, the nutrient film technique system, where students are going to grow leafy greens, lettuces, kale, some herbs. We have tower gardens, where students also are growing leafy greens, more herbs. We have worm bins, so that students are composting when it comes time to harvest any or pruning any sort of organic matter that comes from the labs. We're going to compost that right in sight in the classroom. And then this is just another picture of a classroom. These are classrooms, so we also have tables and chairs, and I think this is really important to point out because there's so much learning that happens in our hydroponic labs. And we also have full-scale greenhouses. So again, you'll see the vine crop systems and the NFTs and the seedling stations. You can't really see it here, but we have tower gardens. And then also for the greenhouses, we have rainwater catchment systems. So the rainwater catchment systems collect the water on the rooftops, and then it's that water that's used in our hydroponic systems. Again, we have worm bins in our greenhouses because we're on the rooftops. All of the light that plants need to grow is going to come from sunlight. And so what we really aim to do is as Nicole already mentioned, our Discovering Sustainability Science curriculum is aligned to the Next Generation Science Standards, the New York Scope and Sequence, and to Amplify Science, all of these pieces of science teaching that our teachers have to use every day in their classrooms. And so we bring sustainability science into the classroom directly. And these are just some pictures of students are always working hands-on in our systems, whether it's caring for plants in the vine crop system, checking in on how seedlings are doing in the NFT, or even transplanting. So we have to move plants around the different systems, working with the worms, making observations. Students are learning how to grow and care for plants and how to take care of the systems while learning about all of the science that they have to learn about in a given grade. And in addition to that, students also get to eat what they're growing too. So it's really exciting. And so this is just another picture. It's not just about the science. We also grow, this is a picture of the harvest cucumbers. We have some chard in there, some purple basil, kale. The amount of food that our labs produce is also wonderful. One of our goals too with our education programs is to share that harvest and the learning that takes place in the classrooms home to students and their families. And then a large part of what I do at New York Sunworks is I spend a lot of time working with teachers. So we work with teachers to understand how to incorporate our lessons into their classrooms. We also do things, get to do fun things like make pickles from the cucumbers that they grow. They get to build their own hydroponic systems using recycled materials. Here we're introducing brand new lessons for the first time. And all of this, the goal of all of this, again, is to bring topics in sustainability science that otherwise wouldn't necessarily be covered directly into our classrooms through the lens of urban agriculture and hydroponics. And I'm going to stop right there and pass it along.
Yeah, no, that was great, Hannah. Thank you. And I do, before I introduce, invite Liel and Debbie to speak, I just wanted to make a note that tonight, I don't know who's attending. I hope it's a mix of, teachers, parents, students, just the general public interested in this topic, but that we can highlight some careers that are actually happening now in science and sustainability. And that's why we have these amazing women on our panel to kind of showcase what the studying these topics in school look like in a career and how it contributes to what we all want to do is combat climate change and make our planet a better place. So hopefully if you can take something away from this tonight, and if not, you can pass it on to somebody, a young person or other people that you know, and feel inspired. So on that note, Liel, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do at NIPA?
Thank you so much, Nicole. Hi, everybody. I am Liel Berman. I'm the Senior Project Coordinator in the Sustainability Department at NIPA. And I also am going to share my screen, but hold on one second. Yes, here we go. A few little visual aids just to make it more interesting. Okay, so for those of you that heard Matt's little description of what NIPA is and what we do, I'll just quick recap. We are the oldest and largest state-run power utility in the country. We provide about 25% of New York State's electricity, and we are a generator and transmitter. So we own large hydroelectric generating facilities, as well as some smaller generating facilities around New York City and in Long Island. And we own about 1,400 miles of transmission lines, and we tend the rights of way along those transmission lines. So we are responsible for the land management there. And we also provide energy services for our customers, everything from energy efficiency to distributed energy resources, renewables, and building projects that allow them to upgrade their energy or make their energy use more efficient. So this is at a glance how our spread is across the state. You see we have, as Matt also talked about, our Niagara Power Project in Buffalo, and then up in the North Country in Messina. And then we have some smaller power hydro plants in this middle of the state, as well as our pumped battery storage facility in the Catskills, which is also a hydro plant, but it's a little bit different how it works. And so we're kind of everywhere. We have visitor centers, we work in communities, we work with customers all over the state, we do economic development, and we're also building electric vehicle charging infrastructure across the state to make it so that any electric vehicle can get to any part of the state without worrying about having a place to charge. So yes, I know, I'm very excited about it too. I'm an electric vehicle driver myself. So a little bit about what I do. I kind of dabble in all aspects of NIPA's sustainability program. I specialize in stakeholder engagement. So that means I'm the person that's kind of talking to everybody that's involved in all of the work that we're doing. The sustainability department at NIPA is really focused on our internal sustainability performance. So that means every aspect of who we are, how we do what we do. So that's everything from materials and waste to how we use land and how we purchase, what we drive, our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Let's see what else, our land use, So there's kind of a little bit of everything, and I love being involved in all of those things. The variety it keeps it interesting, keeps me on my toes. But I do a lot of education and a lot of training and a lot of kind of connecting the dots between different programs and initiatives that we have, and how this contributes to our sustainability, as well as what sustainability really means on the larger sense, and trying to kind of drive that sensibility across the company altogether. We also do some external facing work. Our EJ team is largely responsible for engaging with external stakeholders on sustainability concepts, but we also, we contribute and we work with certain stakeholders. For instance, the IBEW Local 3 Training Center in Long Island City. We work with them on an electric vehicle class that I actually teach every other month or so, to training journeymen and linemen in training. So it's pretty interesting being involved in all these different topic areas. As far as the sustainability concept, these are a couple of visualizations of how we communicate this internally and how we kind of think about it and talk about it. I particularly like this wheel diagram on the right-hand side. We think of that as like sort of an analog for our turbines, and our turbines have to spin in order to keep the juice flowing. And so our turbine here is made up of the 3 spheres of sustainability that many of you are probably familiar with. So, and what happens if these 3 spheres that are interconnected here in our turbine image are not functioning properly, they're not healthy, or they're not in balance with each other, is that the turbine doesn't spin, or it gets wonky. And then over time, it'll start to break apart, and then we have a mess on our hands. So this is what we're working with, to think in terms of how everything is interconnected and interdependent, so that we can not only be sustainable as an organization, but help further sustainability in every aspect across the state that we can touch. So right now, my primary project, I'm going to try to get this to play here. Primary project at NIPA is a very large scale training program about climate science. It's called Sustainable You, Let's Get Climate Smart. It is for all NIPA and Canal Corporation employees, so that's about 2,400 folks. It's a multi-unit, year-plus long program, and that's just phase 1. About starting sort of from the fundamentals of Earth systems and atmospheric systems and how they work, and building on that to really understand what is happening with modern climate change, what the science and modeling and data tell us that we can do about it effectively, and then how that informs NIPA's strategy and the state level policies that are driving mandate, the CLCPA, which is the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. And so what does this mean? You know, what is climate change really about, and what does it mean for NIPA and for how we need to adjust and adapt in order to meet the needs of the 21st century?
That's amazing.
So it's
Leah.
the biggest scale project that we've ever training project that we've ever done at NIPA.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big deal. So yes, I'm talking too much about all of our stuff. So
no, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for that. Great. So Debbie, I'd love for you to tell us about cafeteria culture. I have a feeling a lot of people on the call probably know about it, but share with us.
Well, I actually didn't make a presentation about cafeteria culture. Maybe I should have.
No.
But here's our website, and we have a nice little slideshow on the header to get a good visual idea of what we do. We're working creatively with youth to achieve zero waste, climate smart public school communities and a plastic-free biosphere. We used to say plastic-free schools, but now we know that plastic pollution and microplastics are everywhere, that we really have to look at it in a much more broader sense. We were founded 12 years ago this month as Styrofoam Out of Schools, as a grassroots campaign. And the story is important in a way, because I think it's important to know like how a big part of what we do is inspire youth to make change, and giving them the tools to learn how to use citizen science and advocacy to develop their own initiatives to problem solve, and really to give them that platform for problem solving. And we combine the citizen science and advocacy, civic participation with arts and media production. So we actually bring cameras into the classroom, and it frames everything we do with storytelling, which is really important. Also, I think we know from this era of COVID that data alone can often be, you can become immune to it. Sadly, even with the incredible numbers that we read day after day about mass shootings, about COVID, so what we think is really important is then combining hyper local data with hyper local personal storytelling that students learn how to create in order to inform policy on both a local level, a regional level, and also a national and international level. We were the organization that catalyzed getting styrofoam trays out of schools, all of New York City schools, and now it's the 10 other largest school districts across the US as well. So it's 500 million styrofoam trays diverted from landfills, incinerators, and student meals per year in a regular year, not this year. I have no idea what the date is this year. But what we've done over the years is use the model, our own model, basically, that we used to get rid of styrofoam, which was leading these very small scale pilots in partnerships with students and school communities to actually scale up for big change. And what we've learned, which is actually kind of amazing, we're still doing it. We're iterating and iterating all the time and coming up with new ideas for new pilots. We don't always succeed. And that's good, because if you succeed all the time, there's something wrong. I mean, you're not innovating enough. And we're taking our cues from the students in our classroom, where we might come in and have a whole plan for our curriculum, and we've been able to design our work because it is also piloting curriculum that if the students in the classroom really, if we get the sense that they really need to guide it in another way, yes, of course, we still have this frame we have to stay within, but we're in an amazing position that often, not always, but often the grants that we have allow us to actually move with the students rather than sort of say, this is where we have to go, allowing them to take the lead, which is incredible. So it's also giving them through Socratic discussions, through waste audits, through street litter surveys, through going out and interviewing neighbors, that they have the opportunity to actually collect enough information and then design their own solutions for these issues. I'm sure I forgot to say something really important, but I'll bring it up again as you ask questions. I feel like it's important to get to the next part of the program. And I look forward, you can ask me anything. Oh, and the one last thing I wanted to say is that 3 years ago, we decided we got a grant from the US EPA, which was very rigid, actually. When you get an EPA grant, you have to, follow the rules exactly. And if you change anything, you have to tell them exactly. It's a huge amount of work. But we decided to document, we were in 3 schools, and we decided to document one of the schools every day. We were bringing in cameras anyway, and that became a feature-length documentary that's now won many awards, called Microplastic Madness. This week, it's free on our YouTube channel at Kafka Media. Our YouTube channel has 30 million views and I think 54,000 subscribers right now from all over the world. So check out our other videos as well. Many of them are made by students, and most of our work is done in schools and community that are schools in communities of color, and primarily also communities that are servicing or located within public housing communities. And ask me anything.
Yeah, no, we're definitely gonna dive into that more, and we'll talk a little bit more about the film at the end of this event, at the end of the hour. But thank you so much, all of you, for those introductions. And the next thing I want to ask is, and again, not knowing really the makeup of the audience, but let's assume we might have some students here, or just some people who are aspiring to work in science and STEM and sustainability. And you can all answer at any point, Debbie, Hannah, and Liel, but when did you kind of discover your love of science and sustainability? And what made you interested in pursuing this type of career? Was there some aha moment you had that sparked it for you, or was it something gradually that grew over time? Hannah, you look like you're smiling.
Always ready to start. I love this question. So for me, it started in high school. I had an incredible experience outside the summer after my sophomore year where I had an internship with the Nature Conservancy. And I was fortunate enough to, it was an internship program. It was the first time I had really been away from my family, born and raised in Brooklyn, I could not even bear the thought of horseflies buzzing around my head. But here I found myself on this native plant nursery with strangers and environmental scientists planting seedlings for the first time, because at that time the Nature Conservancy was working on a project to bring back native grass lands to Martha's Vineyard. The whole point was to be, and I think this goes back to what Debbie was saying, to put young people at the center of the work, to give them these experiences and ownership to pursue what they're interested, or just to try new things, to create these safe spaces for them to be on their own and ask questions and be curious. That was the turning point for me, and I was hooked. I was hooked to being outside. I was no longer afraid of horseflies or bees, right? Like I was hooked. And so I went back to high school and I tried to find opportunities to continue to explore my curiosity and interest in science, and this new confidence that I had had from being able to have this experience away from home. And I ended up working with the Student Conservation Association and built trails in the backcountry of Alaska before I graduated from high school. I'm actually a conservation biologist. My background is in conservation genetics. So I've worked with humpback whales and purple sea urchins and oysters, looking at the impact of ocean acidification on populations, and working with scientists on both sides of the country and being in these different environments really drove home for me how much I like to talk about science, and how much I want people to be able to connect with science, and how much I want young people to see science as a field that isn't something special that only certain people can get into. And so that's what led me into science education. And that's why it's thrilling to be at New York Sunworks, because believe it or not, and then I'll stop and pass this to someone else, but I went to the High School for Environmental Studies on West 56th Street, and they became a partner with us last year. So it was pretty wild to go back into the lab where I had taken living environment and AP biology, and there was Mr. Franzoy, my AP bio teacher, and I was going to train him on this new curriculum that we had. So talk about going full circle, but for me, it started in high school.
Wow, that's an amazing story. What must have been such a weird but amazing full circle moment for you to do that. Thanks for sharing. Liel, what about you?
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. That was a great story. I love that full circle. So I had a very different trajectory, and like you said in the question, it was more of a progression. I always was passionate about the environment as a kid, but it was more in the realm of animals. I was a vegetarian from when I was 7 years old, and I got really passionate about animal rights and food systems, and especially animal agriculture. And to me, it was really a justice issue. It was just so unjust, but then also it seemed like it was very foolish that we would take such poor care of creatures that were here that we were dependent on for sustenance and nourishment. So I actually was not terribly into science in school, unfortunately. I was an artist, and I was into the performing arts, and had a full 20-year career in the performing arts and as a teacher. But that actually led me back to studying food and nutrition and food systems, because of the work with, when your body's your instrument and you're working with your students and their body is their instrument, you have to have a very intimate knowledge with how every aspect of your environment and what you're putting into your body is contributing to your ability to perform at your peak. So studying integrative nutrition really opened me up to environmental systems and systems thinking, and the desperate need, the sort of urgency welled up within me to work really in sustainability across all sectors. When I came to Naipa, I took everything that I had learned about integrative nutrition and food systems, and related it to energy systems. And so there are so many parallels, and because they all are interdependent and interconnected, that it really made a lot of sense. And then, you know, my background as a performer, I was very experienced at telling stories. And when I came into the sustainability space, what really did the sort of aha moment was that, oh, the story that I really want to tell, and I've been training my whole life to tell, is the story of this incredible planet and how we exist upon it, and how we relate to each other and every aspect of the ecosystem that we are inherently a part of.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. I love how you kind of like connected that all together. That's such a great, that's a great story too. Debbie, I'd love for you to talk about kind of your journey as well. And then, and then I'd love to talk a little bit about, go back to you with another question after that about how kind of parents and children can work on sustainability, what things they can do at home. So maybe you can kind of tie that in.
So my love of science started in 9th grade with an amazing biology teacher. And that's, you know, I still have tremendous respect and still learning from teachers all across New York City and actually across the country now. And part of when I think back and I think, what's the one day that I remember in that biology class? It's the day that we went to the ocean. And I grew up in Baltimore. My family didn't take long vacations. My dad's job didn't allow for that. I didn't understand how families did that. So I didn't have that connection to nature as a child until I was older. And that trip, that day that we went to the beach to do science on the beach, hands-on, was remarkable for me, and in some ways changed my life. That same teacher was also head of student government, and I was president of student council, and I was very interested in student leadership. But my career, I studied biology for 1 year. I got points taken off for all of my drawings, and I ended up deciding, you know, maybe I'm really an artist, maybe I'm not a scientist. So I went to art school and I worked for most of my life as a set designer. I built giant puppets for the Halloween parade. I did animation. I had a really wonderful career and I loved the work. I loved being involved in theater, movies. I worked in HBO Family for years. There was nothing wrong with my career at all. But 12 years ago, my daughter, when she was 7 years old, made a comment about her styrofoam lunch tray. I was teaching part-time at that time at Parsons School of Design. So I was working also with a lot of design-based initiatives. That was part of what I was teaching in 3D design. And her comment changed my life. I've been in the school, I volunteered. I was a parent who was always involved. Went to my kids' schools, did work in the theater mostly, and in the arts and building projects and things in the classroom. I had never been in a cafeteria. And that's important because when I talk to parents, I realized I just spoke to someone today from Michigan and she said, wow, I've never been in my child's cafeteria. And her school still uses styrofoam trays. So often there's a disconnect to really what's happening in terms of school lunch and how, and also of course, waste and waste management. The parents have no idea what's going on, and of course, food. That comment changed my life, but I wasn't thinking about starting an organization at all. But the more we became involved, I started piloting, teaching some of the curriculum, and I was teaching my freshmen at Parsons School of Design to 5th graders, different schools around the city, and mostly schools that had unbelievable challenges. And that for me was a real turning point to understand how we could teach about sustainability in a very interdisciplinary way, and also about climate education, that it's not just science, and that by making it more of an interdisciplinary subject, there was also the possibility to engage a wider range of teachers in schools to become involved, which I think is super critical right now. My partner in the organization, Atsuko Quirk, is from Japan, and she was at the same time piloting curriculum in the classroom. She made a movie called School Lunch in Japan. If you haven't seen it, it has 30 million views on our YouTube channel. And that very much influenced our work about the culture around food and serving food, food waste, gratitude, respect. And we began to pilot things within the cafeteria and begin to think about how could we use a school lunch period and connect it to the classroom, but also using school lunch as an educational period, which ironically, this year it is, because now in New York, or at least in New York City, I know some of you are not from New York City, lunch period is actually a regular class time period, and students are eating lunch with their teachers. And one of the things we're finding out informally is that there's less food waste. We don't have data on that yet. We're trying to do that. I'll tell you about that later. So that's where I come from. And so design media is very much a part of our work with cafeteria culture, in part because of, you know, what we know how to do as the directors of the organization.
Wow, that's great. I would love to ask just the audience if anybody wants to come off mute and turn on their camera, or if anybody else wants to share with us or ask any questions to our panelists about how they, you know, came to their positions in their career, anything else about the work that they're doing. I just want to invite anybody before we move on to speak up if there's any advice, maybe you're a teacher or an administration looking for advice for your students to help steer them or encourage them to have careers in science and sustainability. So opening up the floor for that. All right, everyone just likes to be listening, so that's fine too. So yeah, I would love to move on to the next question with the panelists and ask, maybe you can talk about some sustainable practices or activities that parents and children can do at home, or maybe I'll kind of extend that and say like teachers and students can do in the classroom to kind of really nurture that connection to sustainability and science and get young people more excited about it. Like, so what are some things that you think that they can do together?
I could go first this time, maybe.
Sure.
We do a lot of different things, but maybe one of the things I love the most are our cafeteria waste audits. And in a way, because students spend so much time in the cafeteria, and often, you know, you think about what do they hear when they're in the cafeteria besides all that noise, that often, what is the thing that people say? I don't know, maybe Sarah knows. It's like when you get up from your tables, take all your things and throw them away. What do you hear, Sarah? What grade are you in, Sarah, by the way? Are you a student? Can you unmute for a minute and tell us what grade are you in?
I'm in 4th grade.
Okay, so do you hear that in your school? What do they say when you finish before COVID? When you get up from the table, what would they say in the cafeteria?
People were, before COVID started, people would basically just get up and walk around.
So we find it really interesting in the cafeteria to actually measure, you know, to take that time, which it's like kind of taking the yuck factor out of your garbage, but bringing teachers and students in together and doing these very, very detailed waste audits where we're actually counting like how many mozzarella sticks, how many burger buns there are, how many plastic forks are unwrapped, how many apple bags never got opened. That kind of data, once students see that and they see the data, we lay it all out, we make very beautiful images as well as collecting really detailed data, photographing the plates, weighing the plates on a scale with numbering before the students eat, after they eat. So it's we probably have the most school food waste data of anybody in New York City. But on the other hand, what's interesting is just laying it out and looking at it, and then just by that process, that students immediately have ideas about how to reduce waste by going through that process, that scientific process of collecting really good data.
Yeah, Ariel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask Debbie that question, but I'm glad that it segued perfectly into that, because I worked at a farm that had a summer camp, and we did the same thing where we didn't call it an audit, but I like that idea where you're counting in particular, like how many mozzarella sticks exactly do we have left over. I have a question though. Do you ever incentivize the students with like any type of prize or reward if there's no waste or a very low amount of waste?
Well, it's great that you say that about the camps, because that's what kids tell us all the time. That's what they say, you know, if they're in 4th and 5th grade and they've gone, I forgot the name of one camp in particular that a lot of New York City school kids go to, and they say, oh, we did this at camp, but I don't understand why we don't do this every day. And that would actually be my dream. It's possible the technology is there that we could incentivize, you know, how there are those energy monitors that say on the first floor of this building is using this much energy right now. The second floor is that actually there are bins that have, digital data that actually weigh what's in there. We could actually have live data in the school. It would be amazing. And I thought years ago, I really tried to make that happen. I kind of gave up on it. So we do simpler kind of incentives. We don't have that kind of budget yet, but it's true. Incentives are huge, and especially for younger kids. And a lot of the incentives that we do are just around leadership, which is actually amazing that at a young age, for a student just to be the captain of the sorting team, or the lead in their class, or to have the opportunity to teach younger students that's enough of an incentive. High school, that's another story. Different kinds of incentives. A great question, Ariel.
Yeah, that is a great question. Hannah or Liel, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll go. Yeah. So as I pointed out in the picture of our classrooms, they all come with worm bins. So we talk about composting, and it's not just about talking about it in the abstract. I mean, kids are in there, they get to dig, they get to watch the process of things decomposing. They get to understand the role that worms play in that process. We also talk about integrated pest management. So in our labs, if there are pests of any sort, we're not using pesticides. And so we're bringing in, sometimes we bring in ladybugs, sometimes we bring in parasitic wasps. We also have recipes for non-toxic sprays that students can take and administer to the plants, but they're also taking in all of these situations, they're taking on the role of the person. They're taking responsibility for making sure that the compost bins are working. They're taking the responsibility of checking and monitoring for pests, of finding ways to control pests. And I think that's a big opportunity for teachers and for parents, is creating those opportunities, those spaces for students to really be given the tools of how, what does a pest look like, and then go and find it for themselves, or go and find evidence of it for themselves. I'll also say that, and actually we're starting for the first time this year virtual field trips, because so many of our schools are still remote. And so the focus of the virtual field trips this spring are going to be composting. So we're going to be looking at worm bins, but we're also going to be looking at composting at an outside community garden. And then I would also say in the classroom, and Debbie already talked about this, but the opportunity for students to take on leadership roles and become the innovators and solve challenges that they find in their school. So maybe it's auditing the amount of paper they're using in their classroom, or maybe it's the amount of water that the school uses, or leaky faucets in the bathrooms. And then students end up becoming leaders in these campaigns to get their schools to make change. And so that's another opportunity. And we see this happening at home. So some of our lessons extend beyond the classroom. So we'll talk about sustainability, but then maybe they'll do a paper audit at home, or they'll do an energy audit at home. Matt, you're familiar with this. We did a Let's Investigate video with Naip where we laid out for students how to collect or how to monitor where energy was being used and possibly being wasted at home. And so that's available on our YouTube channel too, for any families on the call who want to figure out how to do a quick energy audit at home. But those opportunities for collaboration and hands-on ways to explore how we're using resources.
That's fantastic. That's all. And that's a very good point about the Let's Investigate. And I think a lot of it is about being hands-on and having the visuals and having it be interactive, and definitely having that sense of responsibility is huge. And I actually want to pivot to another question, just kind of similar along those lines, but Liel, maybe you could tackle it first. What kind of advice would you give to somebody, a young person or anybody really, who is looking to pursue a career in sustainability or STEM or any type of science? And I mean, all three of you are very successful in what you do. And a lot of people on the call are working in schools, they're working with youth, or they have children, or they have young people in their lives. Like what are like some key things that you would tell them to do in order to encourage them?
So I think it's about leveraging what you're passionate about. You know, when we're really, really connected to something, it has special meaning. And when something is very meaningful to us, then that really comes through in the work and how the work manifests. So for instance, I think when I thought of getting into sustainability, it took me a long time to sort of wrap my mind around, you know, that's a sort of science field, science related field, and I'm not a scientist. You know, how could I do something like that? But then I started to look at fundamentally, practically, the work that I had done, and so much of it is testing to see what the outcome is. And in many ways, that's sort of fundamental to what science is about. You know, you're testing, you're experimenting, you're playing with different possibilities, you're problem solving, and all of that is what science encompasses essentially. So so I think we don't necessarily have to put it all in boxes or in categories or subject areas. That, you know, I was led into a science field through liberal arts and didn't even realize that that's where it was going, because it didn't, you know, look like the inside of a lab, and I didn't like to go camping. But, you know, it takes on a different life, I guess, when you can take those sort of the categorizations and the labels away from it, and look fundamentally at what is the work that I'm practically doing. And then the other thing that I would say is, especially for the sciences and for sustainability in particular, that for young people, it's skills that Debbie and Hannah were talking about, really, you know, specific things that are all about skill building. You know, how you can grow a garden, and how you can redesign things that you use every day so that they're durable and non-disposable and have, you know, a neutral environmental impact. And, you know, we get to those places and being able to re-engineer and reinvent by skill building. So if it's, you know, sewing or cooking, you know, that you can break down raw ingredients and make a meal from it, growing things, that's a huge skill. We've lost sort of the generational passing down of these practical skills, repair, building, woodworking, and all of this is really, they're so critical, such important skills to be able to have for the needs of the 21st century, for the adaptation and the mitigation work that we all need to be involved in some level or another.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good advice. I love that. Sorry, I don't know, there's a weird echo, but is there anybody who's joining the call tonight, maybe in school or thinking about changing careers, or they're just interested in it, or anyone who's an educator who's, you know, talking to youth all the time and wants to ask a question about how to kind of speak to them about these topics? Ariel, yeah, you want to go for it?
I think Galil just brought up a great point about like the generational passing down of information for, you know, any skill, whatever that skill might be, and how now I feel like a lot of those skills are being taught in schools, you know, with a lot of us here today that are, you know, taking on those roles as educators. And I don't know, like her comments just made me think about how I wonder if the initiative is more on the educator side, where like the generational passing down would be, versus the student, or, you know, the learner. So like that just made me think about that kind of dynamic. Like, is it the learner that has to take the initiative now, since it's not being passed down generationally, or is it on the educators now, since there isn't that generational passing down, that we have to, you know, present those opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a combination of both, actually. But yeah, I have one more thing that's one more interesting question that I just I think would be kind of cool to hear from everybody. And I won't put anybody on the spot to turn off cameras or speak, but maybe we could just all put in the chat. So Debbie, Hannah, Liel, I would love to hear from all of you, like, what are some trends or some kind of exciting innovations or activities going on in sustainability that's actually exciting you right now, or just in the process of fighting climate change? Like, what is something that makes you feel like we're headed in the right direction, and you feel invigorated and you feel hopeful, some positive things? So drop in the chat too, if audience, if you have anything that you're excited about. I'll say for me, I'm very excited about all the work that this administration has done so far in such a short time since inauguration. That makes me feel hopeful and excited, and being able to come out on hopefully soon on the other side of COVID, just seeing the adaptability of humans and us come together makes me feel like we can do the same thing to educate our youth and fight climate change together. So that's something for me that I'm excited about in sustainability.
I guess I'd like to say one of the things I'm excited about really is like providing students with the opportunities, once again, to be the advocates, to be the ones making space within our education system for climate action. The cafeteria culture, we look at that, we pitch that to Department of Ed, making every Friday, for instance, Climate Action Friday. So the students in particular, we work with a lot of students from under-resourced schools and are really struggling, who absolutely cannot leave school on Friday to go strike because they feel like then they won't get the scholarship they're trying so hard to get, or they've been working for all 12 years to get into college. So it's like another situation. They don't have that you know, whatever that word would be. So so really looking at like, what are our opportunities? We have so much to do and we don't have a lot of time. And it can be very depressing. It can be very depressing for me. And I think one of the things I find myself that I try to translate into the work that we do and with our team, you know, we have some amazing teachers who are great role models for our students. And I think one of the most important things is that by having the opportunity to take action and to really like that is the part that relieves, that counteracts any kind of depression in a way that if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this is hopeless, well, it is hopeless. But if you have that opportunity, and we provide that opportunity for students in particular, and in particular students from lower income communities, marginalized communities who might not have the same after school activities or something like that. And it's an environmental education is still not completely just in New York City. We have maps now. For years we didn't have maps. We finally have that. We can see which areas are still, you know, in need. I'm sure Manuela has looked at those maps. You know, we're looking at like, what are the schools that we need to touch? But that's really, for me, one of the most hopeful things, but also the things I think we really need to focus on.
Yeah, Marion, I love what you had to say about teaching the students and just seeing their excitement. That's my favorite part of working with New York Summerx, is being able to see the excitement on the students' faces. And sadly, haven't gotten to see that in a while because of COVID, but I look forward to those open houses and ribbon cuttings and harvests to get to see that excitement again. But yeah, it's such an amazing thing. Did you want to share a little bit about that?
Okay. Hi, good evening. So even though with COVID, one of the sad things is that we are not doing the hydroponics as we should this year. I'm still trying to bring up the tower garden, and with my pre-K, and they're all excited about it, using the curriculum, learning about seeds, learning about the benefits of plants. So this year, we have a thriving outdoor garden, which we always had both hydroponics and outdoor. So the garden, children are excited about the garden. I use the garden not just for gardening, but integrating other subjects like math and social studies, helping them to understand, where does our food come from? Is it better to grow our own food locally or have it shipped across the country? So then it takes us into economics. Why grow our local vegetables and fruits? It saves money. They say, oh, it saves money. It saves gas. So gardening, I enjoy doing it, and children are understanding the sustainability behind it, practicing of eating healthier choices. Before COVID, we would take the vegetables from the hydroponic system and the outdoor garden, and we would cook cultural meals, Italian meals, Mexican meals. And it was so good to just have the garden. So this year, a little sad, but at least we have the outdoor.
Yeah,
that
and
I'm
we'll,
hoping we'll do salads, because we still cannot cook because of COVID, but we can at least do tasting. So I take them out to the garden. We wash them really carefully, and they just get to taste the different vegetables.
yeah, that's so great. I think we're all looking forward to the days where we can get back into the labs. So we only have a few minutes left, and I do want Debbie to show the trailer for Microplastic Madness because I think that's such a great video, and it's something great that you can all do together as a family. But before we do that, I just want to end on one more question to our panelists. What would be one or two pieces of advice that you would give to our audience in order to just have some actions that they could take to implement into their daily lives in order to make an impact on the planet in terms of sustainability, or even just get more involved in science? Like, what are two action items you would give? One or two?
I'll go first on this one.
Great.
I think lifelong learning is critical and key. The 21st century, things are changing. The needs of the 21st century are brand new, and the challenges are brand new. And we can't necessarily think that we know what we're doing at any given moment or what we're dealing with. And so the imperative to continue to always be learning and always keep that exploration going of why, keep those why questions going for all ages, no matter what.
Yes.
Because I think that one of the coolest things about this moment in where we are in human history is all the opportunity that there is when things start to fall apart, or when we have converging crises like we've been dealing with in the last year. It's a fantastic opportunity to put it back better than it was, and to re-engineer, reinvent, recreate our systems so that they're fairer and they're more just and they're more equitable and sustainable overall. But learning is how we get there.
100%. Always be learning.
I was going to say something similar too, about asking questions and being curious, and for the adults on this call too, is talking to the young people, finding what they're interested in, what they care about, supporting them, because they are going to be the change makers and the leaders of tomorrow. I think creating them the space for them to do that is really important. And then also, just on a daily basis, remember that we cannot be here without nature. And so respecting that and giving appreciation to that we are a part of nature, and we can't forget that. So remind a friend, remind yourself, but every day I think all of us just need to be like, yeah, we wouldn't be here without nature.
That's great. Good advice. And Debbie, yeah, I don't know if we'll have time to go through.
No need. I actually had prepared. Unfortunately, I don't have time. I can share the link, and maybe Nicole can share it with everybody. You have everybody's contact information. So you can, so a lot of what we do with Cafeteria Culture is making resources for anybody to use. And this isn't completely finished, but I'll share the link. It's basically about the recipe for change, the recipe for plastic-free change. And really, if I was going to say one thing, and that's the essence of, oh, can you still hear me? You can, right? I don't know if you can hear, that how do you start to make change? One person is enough, and really not to be afraid if you have an idea for how to bring change about. And we need so much energy and so much advocacy right now. Sometimes it's just finding one other person. They don't even have to be a friend necessarily, but somebody else who will, and especially for younger people, like you're thinking, wow, we sometimes, we'll show our movie or we'll do a presentation, and there's a first grader who's like, well, I have this idea, but I don't know anybody who would do it with me. And really encouraging people at a young age to believe in the ideas that they have. And sometimes just to be able to do like a small test, a small pilot, and to start small. And really, that's what our recipe of change and what I was going to share today, but you can do it at home. And we have a recipe of change for change website page. I'll put that link in a minute. Is, first just look close to home, do a 1 week plastic waste audit, wash out your plastic and just look at what are all the things that you have in your bin and you would put in your trash bin or your recycling bin. And a lot of what you think is being recycled actually isn't in that blue bin. And take it and then pick out the things, like what are the first things that you really don't even need? You know, I didn't even really need to take that. I could have said I don't really need a straw, or I didn't really need the lid to that cup. I needed the cup, or I could have brought my own cup. And then the next layer would be looking at, you know, what is it that you can talk to your local store about, or where the retail, wherever you go, you know, something a little bit further out from your house, and being brave enough to go to a store manager and say, you know, do you think you could package that? This happens with school food all the time. We're working on this right now. Do you have to wrap the milk in plastic that you're serving in the grab and go lunch? So the next step is like, you know, the people you have direct contact with who have some power. Then manufacturers, things you use all the time. Maybe you order things from Amazon and you're really sick of how they're packaged. Take that minute to either put it on social media or reach out to them, that our dollars really talk. And then the most important and like the last step after looking at all that really is policy. And there's some great policy opportunities right now. And that's on our website too. For the first time, we have a national comprehensive bill that's been introduced to Congress. It's called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. It addresses environmental justice. It addresses even the plastic that we're sending to countries across the globe that cannot handle their own waste, much less our plastic waste. And also bans, national bottle bills. And I really encourage everybody to take a minute on our website, look at that, watch our movie, Microplastic Madness. It's free all this week. It's also free always for Title I schools. If you're on this webinar today and you're not a Title I school, just let me know and we'll make sure it's free for you if you can't do it this week with your class. But it's a great starting point for inspiring change. So thank you so much. And thank you, Nicole, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we're a couple minutes already over 7 o'clock, but our audience has been a little quiet tonight, but if you guys had any other questions before we end the evening, we're willing to take them. So just gonna give it a few minutes here. All right, well, on that note, I'm so glad that everyone could be here to join us tonight. I hope you learned a few things. I hope you feel inspired by our incredible panelists and you have this conversation with a young person in your life or a student that you teach, and you know, they look forward to their career and their future on our beautiful planet. So happy Earth Week, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight, and feel free to reach out to us with any questions and follow-up. Enjoy the rest of your Earth Week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being here.